I'm still shaking. 20 minutes ago, 2 cops showed up with handcuffs. You're under arrest. My stomach drops. Arrested for what? I'm backing away, hands trembling, when Sandra appears. My wife, who watches baking shows in pajamas every night. She glances at their badges. Something flickers across her face. Gentlemen, step back from my husband. Her voice cold, commanding. I don't recognize it. One officer grabs my arm. Sandra moves. Everything blurs. I hear thuds, shouts, then silence. When I look up, I can't even describe what I'm seeing. All I know, the woman standing in our doorway isn't the one I married. Comment. Ever felt like you don't really know someone? The deck was perfect. $8,000 of cedar perfection, built exactly to HOA specification. I'd surprised Sandra for our 12th anniversary, hired Michael Carter, the contractor everyone in Maple Ridge recommended, and watched him spend 3 weeks building what I thought would be our little slice of backyard paradise. Sandra came home from work that Friday evening, dropped her briefcase, and just stared. "Josh," she whispered, walking onto the smooth planks barefoot. This is really something. The neighbors came over that weekend for a barbecue. Mrs. Patricia Wilson from next door brought her famous potato salad, and even the Johnsons from across the street showed up, which never happens. Everyone admired the craftsmanship, the clean lines, and how perfectly it complemented our corner lot. Sandra kept checking her phone, though, which was weird. She'd smile at the compliments, nod at the right times, but her fingers kept dancing across that screen like she was conducting some invisible orchestra. The violation notice arrived on Monday morning. $200 per day fine, effective immediately, for unauthorized construction exceeding maximum deck height by 6 inches. I read it 3 times. 6 inches? Michael had measured everything twice, showed me the blueprints, and even got Teresa Edwards, our HOA president, to sign off on the preliminary plans. I called him immediately. "Josh, man, that's impossible," Michael said, and I could hear genuine confusion in his voice. I built to exact specifications. Teresa approved everything. Every single things. He promised to come over with his original measurements, his permits, everything. Sandra's reaction was the strangest part. She barely looked up from her laptop. "Just tear it down and rebuild," she said, like we were discussing takeout options. "It's not worth fighting Teresa over 6 inches. Trust me." Trust her? The woman who'd just spent 3 weeks pretending to be surprised about a deck I'd been planning for months? Yeah, something was definitely off about all this. Mrs. Wilson caught me measuring the deck that afternoon. 3 families, she said quietly, peering over the fence. 3 families left Maple Ridge after building additions. They all used the same contractor. She wouldn't elaborate, just patted my arm and shuffled back inside. The same contractor? Michael? That didn't make sense. The guy had a 5-star rating, had lived in the area for 6 years, and coached Little League for crying out loud. I mentioned it to Sandra that night. She was working late again, the 3rd time that week, hunched over files spread across our dining room table. "Mrs. Wilson's just lonely," Sandra said without looking up. "She sees conspiracies everywhere. Remember when she thought the mail carrier was casing houses? But here's the thing. Mrs. Wilson had been right about that. The mail carrier was arrested for theft 3 months later. I started to say something, then noticed Sandra's files. They weren't the usual Social Security paperwork. These had photos, timestamps, handwritten notes about meeting patterns and financial transfers. Before I could ask, she swept everything into her briefcase. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about Sandra's dismissiveness, Mrs. Wilson's warning, Teresa's sudden enforcement of some obscure height regulation, it all felt choreographed somehow. I got up for water around 2 a.m. and noticed Sandra's car keys were gone. Her purse, too. The bedroom door was open, the bed empty. I checked my phone. 2:17 a.m. Where does a Social Security claims processor go at 2 in the morning? I walked to the window just in time to see our BMW's taillights disappearing down Maple Ridge Drive. My stomach dropped. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never once doubted Sandra. Sure, she worked weird hours sometimes, had the occasional conference call that took her into the home office. But this? Sneaking out in the middle of the night? I went back to bed but stared at the ceiling until dawn, running through every interaction, every late night, every time she'd been too tired to talk about work. When she slipped back into bed at 4:30 a.m., I pretended to be asleep. She smelled like coffee and some floral perfume I didn't recognize. Michael showed up the next morning with rolls of blueprints and a tape measure. I don't understand, he kept saying, measuring the deck height over and over. This is exactly 36 inches, maximum allowable height. Exactly. Teresa had specified 30 inches in the violation notice. Michael's measurements showed 36. The legal maximum was 38. She's lying, I said. Michael looked uncomfortable. Josh, Teresa lost her husband in a construction accident 2 years ago. She's super protective about building codes and safety violations. Maybe she just misread the measurements? Super protective? The woman had approved plans for 3 pool installations, 2 garage conversions, and the Hendersons' monstrosity of a gazebo just last year. Why target my simple deck? Then Michael showed me something that made my blood run cold. In his truck, he had a folder, paperwork from his last 3 jobs in Maple Ridge, the Rodriguez family on Oak Street, the Patels on Birch, the Kowalskis on Elm, all corner lots, all received violation notices, all eventually sold their homes. I thought it was a coincidence, Michael said quietly, but 3 and 18 months? And now you? Sandra came home early that day, which never happened. She walked straight to the deck, stood there for a long minute, then turned to me with the strangest expression. Tear it down this weekend, she said firmly. I'll help you. We'll rebuild it shorter, whatever Teresa wants. She was serious. My wife, who'd fought the HOA for 3 months over our mailbox color, wanted to surrender immediately over 6 phantom inches. No, I said. We're fighting this. Something flickered across her face. Was it fear? Pride? I couldn't tell. Josh, she started, then stopped. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her whole body tensed. I need to make a call, she said, and disappeared into the garage. I watched through the kitchen window as she paced back and forth, gesturing emphatically at whoever was on the other end. When she came back in, she was different somehow, resolved. Do what you want about the deck, she said. I've got work to do. She grabbed her laptop and locked herself in the home office for the rest of the night. That's when I started looking. Not proud of it, but fear makes you do stupid things. I checked the mileage on Sandra's car, 300 miles more than last week. Our town's only 15 miles across. I looked at our credit card statements. Hotels, multiple hotels in different cities, all during her supposed office hours. I found receipts tucked in her console, coffee shops I'd never heard of, gas stations in towns 50 miles away, even a purchase from a surveillance equipment store. Surveillance? My wife, who processed disability paperwork, needed surveillance equipment. I sat in our garage, surrounded by evidence of a life I didn't recognize, and tried to make sense of it. The worst part? When I really thought about it, Sandra had been acting strange for months. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way she'd flinch when I walked into a room unexpectedly. I'd convinced myself it was work stress, that government jobs were demanding. But what if it didn't work? What if Teresa's violation notice, Michael's involvement, Mrs. Wilson's warning, what if it was all connected to whatever Sandra was hiding? And more terrifying, what if she was working with them, not against them? I followed my wife at 2 a.m. like some desperate character in a bad movie. She'd left the bed at 1:45, dressed completely in the dark, and drove away in her BMW without lights until she reached the end of our street. I took my truck, kept 3 cars back, and felt like an absolute idiot. Where was I going with this? What was I hoping to find? She drove to the industrial park on Route 7, pulled into the parking lot of a vacant office building, and just sat there. 10 minutes later, another car arrived. A man got out, 50-ish, gray hair, expensive suit, even at this hour. They talked through rolled-down windows for 5 minutes, then a third car pulled up. This one had a woman, younger, maybe early 30s, and she was crying. I watched through binoculars as Sandra handed her tissues, patted her shoulder, and wrote something in a notebook. The whole scene lasted maybe 20 minutes. Then everyone drove away in different directions. Not exactly what you'd expect from an affair, right? But not what you'd expect from a Social Security worker either. Morning came too fast. Sandra was already up, dressed for work, making coffee like nothing had happened. Sleep well? She asked, not looking at me. Fine, I lied. You? She smiled. Like the dead. The dead. What a choice of words. I pushed down the anger, the confusion, the fear, and asked, "What time did you get home last night?" I thought I heard the garage door. Her hand stopped mid-pour, just for a second, but I saw it. "I didn't go anywhere," she said calmly. "You must have been dreaming." Gaslighting. My wife was actually gaslighting me. We'd been married 12 years, and she was looking me dead in the eye, and lying about something I'd literally witnessed. "Right," I said. "My mistake." She kissed my cheek, quick, perfunctory, and left for work. 30 seconds later, Michael texted me. "Can I stop by?" "It's important." When he arrived, he looked like he hadn't slept. "Josh, I need to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone. "I got an email last night from your wife." The email address was sandra.roberts@socgov.net, official-looking, government domain. The message was short. "Proceed with original deck specifications. Standard bonus applies upon violation notice. TR." My stomach turned. TR Teresa Richards? No, wait, Teresa Edwards. Unless... "This doesn't make sense," I said. "Sandra doesn't have access to..." But Michael interrupted. "That's not all." I cross-checked my records. All 3 previous jobs, I got similar emails, different addresses, but always variations of your wife's name. S. Roberts, Sandra R., even S. Roberts, HOA. He looked miserable. "Josh, I think your wife has been setting people up, including you. She told me to build the deck to specific measurements, I'd get a bonus, and then Teresa would file violations. Clean profit. Except," he trailed off. "Except I was her husband. She was willing to scam her own husband?" The room spun. I grabbed the counter for support. "How much?" I asked quietly. "How much did she pay you?" Michael looked ashamed. $500 per job. But, Josh, I swear, I thought it was legitimate. Some kind of quality control thing, testing contractors. That afternoon, Teresa invited me over for coffee. "Just neighbors chatting," she'd said on the phone. Her house was immaculate. No photos of the dead husband Michael had mentioned. No construction accident memorial, nothing personal at all. Just pristine furniture and walls painted in HOA-approved colors. "I wanted to explain about the deck," she started, pouring expensive-looking coffee into bone china cups. "My husband died in a construction accident. The platform gave way and fell 3 stories. Her voice cracked perfectly, and tears welled up right on cue. "I know it seems strict, but every violation I write is because I don't want another family to suffer what I suffered." She touched my hand. "The deck is beautiful, Josh. Really, but those 6 inches, they matter for weight distribution, for safety. I'm just trying to protect you." I almost believed her. Almost. But then I noticed her manicure. Fresh, expensive, with tiny diamonds embedded in the polish. Strange choice for a grieving widow living on a fixed income. And her coffee. I recognized the label. $70 a pound. My Social Security processor wife couldn't afford that coffee. I got home to find a bank statement on my desk. Not ours, Sandra's private account I didn't know existed. $3,500 is deposited every 2 weeks from DMK Legal Services. Legal Services? My wife worked for Social Security. Why would a law firm be paying her? I photographed everything, then dug deeper. The deposits went back 6 months, always the same amount, always the same source. $72,000 in half a year, tax-free, secret. I felt sick. Next to the statement was a burner phone. I'd never seen it before. Recent calls to numbers I didn't recognize, texts in some kind of code, package delivered to Target 3. Surveillance confirms pattern. Subject unaware, proceeding to phase 2. Was I the subject? Was our house the target? I heard Sandra's car in the driveway and shoved everything back where I'd found it. She walked in, saw my face, and froze. "What's wrong?" she asked carefully. "Everything," I wanted to scream. "Everything is wrong." Instead, I said, "Nothing. Just tired." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'm going out tonight," she announced. "Client emergency. Might be late. Client emergency at Social Security at 7 p.m. I installed the hidden camera while she was in the shower. A tiny thing, no bigger than a button, tucked into the bookshelf facing the living room. If she was going to lie, I needed proof. If she was working some scam with Teresa and Michael, I needed evidence. The camera rolled as she came downstairs, dressed all in black. Tactical pants, dark jacket, running shoes instead of her usual heels. She loaded equipment into a backpack, laptop, what looked like a professional camera with a long-range lens, multiple phones, and something else I couldn't quite see. "Don't wait up," she called, and was gone. I watched on my phone as she drove away. Then I reviewed the footage from earlier. Sandra had come home at lunch, something she never did, and spent 30 minutes photographing our deck from every angle, measuring it with a laser tool, writing in a leather notebook. She'd even climbed onto our roof for overhead shots. This wasn't random. This was documentation. Professional documentation. But for what? For whom? Michael called at midnight. Josh, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you something else. Teresa, she's not who she says she is. His voice shook. I did some research. There's no record of a husband dying in a construction accident. No obituary, no accident report, nothing. I checked with my insurance company. They keep records of all major incidents. Teresa Edwards doesn't have a dead husband. The pieces were shifting, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Then who is she? I asked. Michael was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but Josh, your wife does. I saw them having lunch last week, very friendly, very familiar. They're working together on something and I think, he paused. I think we're both being played. I hung up and watched the live feed from my hidden camera. Empty living room, empty house. My wife was out there somewhere, doing something I couldn't understand, with people I couldn't trust. And I was sitting in the dark, wondering how I'd gotten here, wondering when my normal life had turned into this nightmare, wondering if I'd ever really known the woman I married at all. The Sunset Motel on Highway 9 was the kind of place you'd never visit voluntarily. Peeling paint, flickering neon, the whole depressing setup. I watched Sandra's BMW pull into the parking lot at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. She'd called in sick to work, or at least that's what she'd told me. She went to room 218, knocked 3 times in some kind of pattern, and disappeared inside. I gave her 10 minutes, then crept closer. Through the thin curtains, I could see 2 figures. Sandra and a middle-aged woman are sitting on the bed. The woman was crying, Sandra was taking notes, and every few minutes Sandra would show her phone and the woman would nod vigorously. After 40 minutes, they hugged, long, emotional, and Sandra left. The woman stayed behind, sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. I approached her door and knocked softly. She opened it with red eyes and a suspicious look. "Who are you?" she asked. "Josh Roberts. I'm Sandra's," but she slammed the door before I could finish. Through the woods, I heard her crying harder. Michael met me at the diner with his theory. "Your wife is playing both sides," he said, spreading documents across the table. "Look at this. She sets up the violation through me, I get my cut, but then she also counsels the victims, tells them to fight it, hires lawyers, drags it out while Teresa pressures them to sell. It's brilliant, really. She makes money from the scam and from helping people resist it." He showed me bank statements, his payments from that same source paying Sandra, DMK Legal Services. Except Michael's statements showed withdrawals, not deposits. He was paying them too. "It's a shell company," Michael insisted. "They're washing money through it. Your wife, Teresa, and maybe others. This goes deeper than just HOA violations, Josh. This is organized." I wanted to argue, to defend Sandra, but I couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. My wife was either a criminal mastermind or the world's most elaborate liar, maybe both. That night, I found more business cards in Sandra's car. Not just one identity. She had 6 different names, 6 different companies, all with her photo. Sarah Rollins, insurance investigator. Sandra, legal consultant. S.R. Thompson, property assessor. Each card was worn, used, and legitimate looking. Who was this woman? I'd married Sandra Roberts, a quiet government worker who liked true crime podcasts and hated cilantro. Now I was living with a ghost, a chameleon, someone who could be anyone at any time. I confronted her when she got home. "Who are you?" I demanded, throwing the cards on the table. She went pale, then red, then something else entirely. "You went through my car?" Not denial, no explanation, just anger that I'd discovered her secrets. "You've been lying for months," I shouted. "Multiple identities, secret meetings, mysterious payments. What am I supposed to think?" Sandra's jaw tightened. "You're supposed to trust me," she said coldly. 12 years of marriage and you break into my car. You're running some kind of scam," she laughed. Actually, I laughed. "A scam? You think I'm—" She stopped herself, grabbed her keys. "I can't do this right now. I need space from this." She gestured at me like I was the problem. Teresa showed up at my door an hour later. "I heard shouting," she said sweetly, though we were 3 houses apart. "Is everything okay?" I almost told her everything, almost spilled about Sandra's double life, the motel meetings, the multiple identities. But something in Teresa's eyes stopped me, too eager, too pleased. "We're fine," I said shortly. She lingered, clearly fishing for details, then produced her phone. "Josh, I hate to show you this, but as a friend," the screenshots looked damning. Text messages between Sandra and Teresa discussing filing fraudulent violations, splitting profits, and identifying target homes. Sandra, file the violation tomorrow. Teresa, but the measurements are actually legal. Sandra, make something up. He'll pay anything to avoid court. I felt my knees buckle. Teresa caught my arm. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I tried to resist, but she threatened to report my husband's accident as fraud. She's been blackmailing me for months. I didn't know what else to do. Sandra checked into the Marriott downtown. Separation, she called it. Until you decide to trust me again? The irony was almost funny. Almost. I sat in our empty house, reviewing everything. The hidden camera footage showed Sandra's methodical documentation of our deck. The bank statements proved mysterious payments. The motel meeting confirmed she was counseling someone. But about what? Fighting Teresa? Working with her? I couldn't tell anymore. Michael's theory made sense on paper. Sandra running both sides of a real estate scam, profiting from chaos she'd created. But the crying woman at the motel, the way Sandra had comforted her, that seemed genuine. Unless that was part of the con, too. Professional criminals could fake anything, right? I opened my laptop to email my lawyer about divorce options when a notification popped up. Someone had sent me a file, anonymous sender, encrypted attachment. Inside was a USB drive's worth of data. Files labeled Edwards Real Estate Fraud Investigation. Video testimonies from 6 different families. Property transfer records. A timeline going back 18 months. And photos of Teresa, not grieving widow Teresa, but smiling Teresa at house closings, celebrating Teresa, shaking hands with realtors, wealthy Teresa buying a 3rd rental property. The last file was a voice recording. This is victim 4. Sandra Roberts helped me understand what happened. Teresa Edwards forced us out using fake violations. The contractor, Michael Carter, was in on it. They made $70,000 off our house. Then another voice. Victim 2. We lost everything. Our dream home. Sandra said she's building a case, gathering evidence for a lawsuit. She's the only one who believed us. 6 families, 6 testimonies, all naming Teresa and Michael. No one is accusing Sandra. I grabbed my phone to call her, demanding an explanation, when my screen lit up with a text from Michael. Emergency. Sandra just broke into my work van, threatened me. Meet at my office now. I have security footage. Come alone. My heart raced. Security footage of Sandra threatening someone? That would be proof. Undeniable proof. She was a criminal. I grabbed my keys and rushed out. Behind me on the computer, one final file opened automatically. A video. Sandra, speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, Josh, I'm sorry for everything. But please don't trust Michael. Don't meet him anywhere alone. The video cut off. I drove anyway. Stupid, reckless, desperate. Michael's office was above his garage in a converted workspace. He was waiting at the door. Thank God you came, he said, ushering me inside. The footage is shocking. Sandra's completely lost it, but something felt wrong. The office was too neat, too staged, and Michael kept checking his phone, nervous energy radiating off him. Show me, I demanded. He pulled up a video on his computer, grainy, shaky footage of someone in Sandra's jacket near his van. Definitely staged, definitely fake. Michael, I said slowly, this isn't real. His face changed. You're smarter than I thought, he admitted, reaching into his desk drawer. When his hand came out, it held a gun. Sorry, Josh. This was supposed to be clean. Quick sale, everyone moves on. But you had to go digging. My blood ran cold. Teresa's plan? I asked. He smiled. Our plan. We've been partners for 3 years, 6 houses, 400,000 profit each. You were supposed to be number 7. He gestured to the window. The police scanner says there's a domestic disturbance here. Crazy husband threatens the contractor. Tragic shooting. Self-defense, of course. The doorbell rang. Michael's gun stayed pointed at my chest as footsteps approached the door. Heavy boots, multiple people. Don't move, he hissed, but his hand was shaking. The knock came loud and official. Police! Open up! Michael's eyes widened. This wasn't part of his plan. Real cops weren't supposed to be here yet. He'd called them himself after the shooting. I said open up! Another knock, harder. Michael gestured with the gun toward the door. Tell them everything's fine. One wrong word and he didn't finish the threat. I walked to the door, mind racing. Through the peephole I saw 2 officers in full uniform, but something was off. The badges looked wrong, too shiny, too new. Rental cops? Fake cops? Then I heard her voice. Police! We have a warrant for Joshua Roberts. Sandra's voice was authoritative and commanding. Arrest warrant for HOA violations, threatening behavior toward HOA officials. This was insane. Completely insane. I yanked the door open. These are fake cops, I shouted. Michael's trying to... But the two men in uniform pushed past me. Subject is delusional, Michael announced calmly, slipping the gun back into his drawer. Use force if necessary. The taller one, Tony, according to his badge, reached for my arm. Then Sandra appeared behind them, bathrobe over street clothes, no badge, no authority, just my wife looking absolutely furious. Gentlemen, she said quietly, you're committing felony fraud. Step aside. The shorter cop, Rick, made the mistake of laughing. Tony made the bigger mistake of reaching for Sandra's arm. What happened next took maybe 3 seconds. Sandra twisted, ducked, and suddenly Tony was face down on Michael's porch, his fake badge clattering away. Rick sprinted down the street like the devil was chasing him. Michael lunged for the desk drawer, but Sandra was faster. One kick sent the drawer slamming shut on his fingers. Recording everything, she announced, pointing to her phone mounted on the railing, including you pulling a gun on my husband. Car doors slammed. Real police this time. 3 squad cars, lights flashing, and in the middle of them, a silver sedan containing a man in an expensive suit. David Walker introduced himself as we sat in Michael's office, now a crime scene. An attorney representing 6 families was defrauded by Teresa Edwards and Michael Carter, he explained. Sandra's been my investigator for 4 months. I stared at my wife, who was calmly giving her statement to a detective. Investigator? I repeated stupidly. David smiled sympathetically. Private investigator, licensed by the state. Specializes in real estate fraud. Best in the business. He showed me his identification, his bar card, and documentation of the civil lawsuit. Teresa targets corner lots because they sell for premium prices. Michael creates violations using his contractor access. They pressure families to sell fast, below market value, then Teresa flips them for a huge profit. Classic scheme. I watched Sandra demonstrate on a notepad how Michael had twisted my deck requirements. She told him to build it exactly to code, David continued, then recommended him to you through fake reviews online. Teresa took the bait, tried her usual violation scam, and Sandra documented everything. I felt like an idiot. The hidden cameras, the surveillance, the late-night meetings, all legitimate investigation work. The crying woman at the motel, victim testimony, the multiple business cards, cover identities for different cases, the payments from DMK Legal, that was David M. Walker paying his investigator. But the email, I protested. Michael got an email from Sandra telling him to create the violation. David shook his head. Spoofed. Teresa sent it pretending to be Sandra to manipulate Michael into thinking he had backup. Classic misdirection. My wife appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted. Can I talk to Josh? She asked quietly. The detective nodded, and everyone filed out, leaving us alone in the office where Michael had almost killed me. You made me the bait, I said finally. For 4 months you let me think you were having an affair, let me doubt everything, all to catch Teresa. Sandra sat heavily in Michael's chair. I wanted to tell you, every single day. But victims die in these cases, Josh. Witnesses disappear. I couldn't risk... Risk what? That I'd tell someone? That I'd protect my own wife? She looked at me then, really looked at me. You installed cameras in our house. You followed me. You went through my private files. Her voice cracked. You thought I was a criminal, Josh. You actually believed I could... Because you lied, I shouted. Every day, every night, sneaking around, secret phones, mysterious payments. What was I supposed to think? We sat in silence, the weight of 4 months of deception crushing us both. I was protecting you, Sandra whispered. I was trying to trust you, I countered. Neither of us had the moral high ground here. Outside, they were loading Michael into a squad car. Teresa had been arrested at home, apparently trying to flee through her backyard with a suitcase full of cash. The 2 fake cops were being questioned separately, already turning on each other. The USB drive, Sandra said quietly. Did you open the last file? My video message? I shook my head. She pulled out her phone, showed me the full recording I'd only seen half of. Her face filled the screen, urgent and afraid. If you're watching this, Josh, I'm sorry. For everything. But please don't trust Michael. Don't meet him anywhere alone. He's dangerous, and he's desperate, and if he thinks you know too much. The video showed her checking her watch. I'm heading to his office now. If I'm right, he's setting a trap.